At 61 years old, Jim Carrey sat down for what he called his last real interview. The man who spent 4 decades electrifying audiences with rubber-faced chaos, explosive characters, and boundless energy was finally ready to tell the truth. For years, fans sensed there was something deeper behind his comedic brilliance, a darkness flickering behind the manic grin. And in 2025, Carrey confirmed what many had long suspected. He revealed that he had been on Prozac since the late 1980s, quietly fighting what he described as a low-level despair that never fully released its grip. But even that wasn't the most shocking part. What he confessed about his father's suicide attempts and his own breaking point would forever change the way the world viewed every movie he had ever made. Jim Carrey's story begins on January 17, 1962, in the small, working-class town of Newmarket, Ontario. He was the youngest of 4 children in a household where dreams and bills collided every month. His father, Percy Carrey, was a gifted saxophone player who had once chased a career with a jazz band before responsibilities forced him into a modest accounting job at Titan Wheels in Scarborough. He made just $8,000 a year, barely enough to keep the lights on. Jim's mother, Kathleen, struggled with chronic illness, often bedridden, fighting pain that no medication could ever seem to fully control. The family name, originally Carr, had been anglicized when Percy's ancestors arrived in Canada, trading heritage for assimilation. Inside that small, noisy house, Jim grew up watching his father's quiet disappointment simmer. Percy had the heart of a musician trapped behind a desk, playing the role of a man who had let life tame him. And even as a child, Jim noticed something adults rarely say aloud. Sometimes hard work simply isn't enough. At 8 years old, Jim found his first escape in the mirror. While other kids played outside, he stood in front of his reflection, twisting his face into bizarre shapes that would make even his siblings freeze in awe. By 10, his confidence soared so high that he mailed a letter to Carol Burnett, declaring he was already a master impressionist. When he received a polite form letter in return, he treated it like a sacred artifact. He taped it to his bedroom wall like a promise to himself. In school, he couldn't resist performing. Every class became a stage. He morphed into teachers, celebrities, and cartoon characters until the principal sent him out of the room again and again. Other kids called him Rubber Face, a nickname that would follow him into adulthood. But for a boy living under constant financial pressure, laughter became his currency. Every giggle was proof he existed. Everything changed in 1975. Titan Wheels shut down without warning. Percy, 51 years old, was suddenly jobless. He mailed out 73 applications to accounting firms across Ontario. Not one responded. Bills piled up. Kathleen's medical expenses devoured whatever they had left. Percy finally swallowed his pride and accepted a janitorial job for $4 an hour. The same man who once wore ties and carried briefcases now scrubbed toilets in the same kind of factory he had once worked in as an accountant. For 13-year-old Jim, the humiliation cut deep. And it was only the beginning. Within months, the Carrey family lost their home. From 1974 to 1976, they lived in a yellow Volkswagen camper van parked near Lake Ontario. Percy and Kathleen slept inside while Jim and his brother John pitched a tent beside it, even through brutal Canadian winters. They woke up with frost clinging to their sleeping bags. They washed up in gas station sinks. Some mornings, Jim scavenged expired sandwiches from convenience store dumpsters and warmed them over the van's tiny stovetop. To survive, the entire family worked the night shift at a local factory, earning $32 for 8 hours of scrubbing floors and cleaning bathrooms. Jim attended Aldershot High School during the day, exhausted, unwashed, and emotionally numb. By 15, Kathleen's illness had worsened so much that she could barely walk. Jim began missing classes to stay home and care for her. By 16, he dropped out of school entirely to work full-time beside his father, earning $4.25 an hour. His days and nights bled together. He cleaned factories all night, came home at dawn, lifted his mother from bed, washed her, cooked for her, and told jokes to keep her spirits alive. Those jokes were his armor. His mother called him her little sunshine, and though he smiled for her, inside he was terrified. And then came the morning that changed his life forever. In 1982, Jim found his father unconscious in the bathroom. Percy had swallowed a bottle of pills. Jim screamed for help as paramedics rushed Percy to Joseph Brant Hospital. They saved his life by mere minutes. Later, Percy confessed that he had attempted suicide twice before, during the grim years in the camper van. The revelation shattered Jim. He carried the fear that the same darkness lived inside him. It became the engine that pushed him relentlessly, the reason he worked like a man outrunning his own shadow. But through all the chaos, the spark of comedy refused to die. When Jim was 15, Percy drove him to Toronto's legendary Yuck Yucks Comedy Club for his first real stand-up performance. Kathleen had dressed him in a bright polyester leisure suit, convinced that's what comedians wore on television. The set bombed. The audience barely clapped. But Percy drove him home with quiet pride. Jim realized that failure on stage wasn't fatal. It was practice. On his 16th birthday, he quit school for good. The family was still barely surviving, and laughter had become Jim's lifeline. He spent 12-hour nights working in factories, slept in the van between shifts, and practiced impressions during his breaks. He had once been a straight-A student, but poverty carved him into someone far older than his age. The family was collapsing under the strain. His siblings drifted away. His father sank deeper into depression, and Kathleen's painkiller use spiraled into addiction. She often said things like, "My brain is deteriorating at an incredible rate," or "I could go at any time." For a teenager already battling fear and responsibility, those words cut deep. At 17, Jim finally earned his first $20 from a 20-minute comedy set at a club called The Hoff. $20 felt like a glimpse of freedom. In 1980, he auditioned for Saturday Night Live. He thought he was destined for stardom, but he never even got to meet Lorne Michaels. Producers dismissed him, saying, "I don't think Lorne would like it." The rejection burned. He auditioned again in 1983, and again in 1986. 3 rejections, 3 slaps to the face. But instead of quitting, he reinvented himself. As the years passed, his humor sharpened. Behind the laughs were invisible wounds. He had been bullied for being poor, mocked for his clothes, and sometimes so overwhelmed that he hurt himself just to feel something real. Years later, he discussed those moments in a documentary that was so raw, producers kept the footage locked away for nearly 20 years. In 1981, at 19, Jim landed his first film role in a low-budget Canadian movie called Introducing Janet, later renamed Rubberface. He played a struggling comedian, a role that mirrored his own life almost perfectly. It wasn't a breakout, but it was a beginning. That same year, he took a leap of faith. With only $200 in his pocket, he left Toronto for Los Angeles. He slept on couches in comedy clubs, lived on free meals, and auditioned for anything he could find. By 1982, he was performing at the Comedy Store, the same stage that had launched legends like Richard Pryor and Robin Williams. One night, Rodney Dangerfield saw him perform and invited him on his 1982 to 1983 tour. Jim was the youngest comedian in the lineup, opening shows for thousands, yet still scraping by on one meal a day. But hunger now had purpose. Over the next few years, he picked up small television roles, low-paying but essential. In 1983, he earned $50 a week on a sketch show called the Sex and Violence Family Hour. He lived in an empty apartment with no furniture. In 1984, he landed a sitcom called The Duck Factory, but it was canceled after 13 episodes. Debt swallowed him again. Still, he refused to stop. In 1985, he finally tasted success. He starred in Once Bitten, a quirky vampire comedy that earned $19 million on a $1.5 million budget. Critics were lukewarm, but the industry noticed him. The rubber-faced kid from Ontario was becoming someone Hollywood could no longer ignore. But fame brought new problems. An arrest for marijuana possession, a brief affair with Mia Farrow, a growing reliance on cocaine to stay awake for all-night rehearsal sessions. Jim described those years as some of the darkest of his life. And still, he kept going. His big break came in 1990 when he was cast in Living Color, a Fox sketch series that boldly challenged the boundaries of comedy. From the moment he appeared on screen, he was different, bigger, wilder, fearless. He created more than 120 characters over 5 seasons. But one character became iconic. Fire Marshal Bill, the deranged safety instructor with a melted face and manic grin. His catchphrase, "Let me tell you something," became a cultural phenomenon. The show was a hit, pulling in millions of viewers. And Jim Carrey wasn't just fitting in. He was stealing the spotlight. For the first time, a white comedian had become the breakout star of a show created by and centered around black comedy brilliance, including the Wayans brothers. But the fame came with a price. To maintain the physical insanity of his characters, such as the hypermuscular Vera DeMilo or his wild Ice-T parodies, Jim pushed his body to the limit. He gained and lost 20 pounds in a single week. He slammed himself into walls, furniture, and floors. He twisted his limbs, contorted his face, and forced his voice through impossible shapes. He was using his own body as a weapon of comedy. By 1992, during one sketch, he twisted his ankle so badly he spent the rest of the week filming in pain. But he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. He was earning $25,000 per episode, more money than he had ever seen. But the pressure was destroying him from the inside. To survive the brutal 80-hour work weeks, he turned to Adderall. It kept him awake. It kept him performing. But it also pulled him further apart. At home, things were falling apart. He had married Melissa Womer in 1987, a woman who had believed in him long before anyone else did. But as In Living Color became a phenomenon, their marriage began to crack. Fame brought late nights, strip clubs, secrets, and lies. In 1995, Melissa filed for divorce. She claimed he had cheated with dancers, that he had become someone she no longer recognized. Court documents later confirmed much of it. While the world laughed, Jim's home life was collapsing. Even the sketches he performed caused problems. During the 1992 to 1993 seasons, some segments pushed the boundaries so far that Fox executives panicked. One sketch, Home Bars, mocked gang culture and pulled in 10 million viewers, but it also sparked complaints from community organizations. Behind the scenes, battles erupted between the creators and the network over what could and could not air. And through it all, Jim kept smiling, the same smile that had first saved him as a little boy standing in front of a mirror. Because for Jim Carrey, the laughter had never just been comedy. It had been survival. Jim Carrey never played by the rules. He didn't tiptoe around Hollywood, didn't smooth his rough edges, and definitely didn't soften his comedy to make anyone comfortable. From the very beginning, he attacked the industry the same way he delivered a punchline. Full force, no apologies, and absolutely no filter. He mocked everything: race, culture, politics, even religion. His early stand-up sets were so unrestrained that studios didn't know whether to blacklist him or sign him. But after years of clawing his way through auditions, rejections, and endless battles with producers, he finally walked away from the grind in 1994. Not because he burned out, but because he exploded. That was the year Ace Ventura, Pet Detective dropped, a movie nobody took seriously, nobody believed in, and nobody expected to change comedy forever. The film cost a measly $15 million. It earned $72 million in the US, and $107 million worldwide. And Jim Carrey improvised nearly 40% of his lines. He didn't play Ace Ventura. He became Ace Ventura. His catchphrase, "Alrighty then," hit the culture like a lightning bolt. One night, he was an oddball TV comic. The next morning, every kid in America was quoting him. Suddenly, the studios who used to laugh at him were lining up to beg for him. When Carrey auditioned for the lead, he didn't even bother reading the script. He started doing voices: Ray Charles, Tony Bennett, characters nobody had written. It shouldn't have worked, but it did. He beat out 19 other actors. Originally, the female lead was supposed to be Sean Young, but she clashed so hard with Carrey and the director that she was fired. The role went to Courtney Cox instead. By then, the entire film was being rewritten around the wildfire of Carrey's creativity. His pranks were relentless. In one scene, he grabbed a choir singer's arm mid-note just to see what would happen. They kept it in the movie. No one could stop him. No one wanted to, because the box office was speaking louder than anyone. Still, The cost of genius was starting to show. He made $350,000 for Ace Ventura, then $7 million for Dumb and Dumber, then $20 million for The Cable Guy. The money skyrocketed. Jim Carrey did not. During the promotional tour for Dumb and Dumber, Carrey snapped. He had a full nervous breakdown. He hallucinated. He admitted to using cocaine just to stay awake. He described himself as a manic-depressive clown wearing a mask. Not the green one from The Mask. The invisible one comedians wear to hide their pain. His face was everywhere. Ace Ventura dolls, T-shirts, lunchboxes, toys. Over 1 million licensed products sold. But Carrey wasn't celebrating. In 1995, he sued Warner Brothers for $20 million, accusing them of using his face in video games without permission. He was the biggest comedy star on earth, yet he didn't even own his own smile. The lawsuit would later change celebrity image rights forever. But for Carrey, it was personal. When Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls began production, Carrey demanded $15 million plus gross points, one of the biggest comedy paychecks of the decade. The film made $212 million worldwide. But Carrey hated the script. Animal cruelty jokes, offensive dialogue, cheap shots he wanted nothing to do with. He tried to rewrite scenes on the spot. He fought with writers. He ad-libbed safer lines. Still, some of the worst jokes made their way on screen. Animal rights groups attacked the film. Carrey smiled for cameras, but inside, he was horrified. Unstoppable success, unstoppable pain. Then came The Mask. Budget, $18 million. Box office, $352 million. Fourth highest grossing movie of 1994. But the process was torture. Carrey wore prosthetics for up to 12 hours a day. It burned his skin. He could barely breathe. He pushed through it anyway. And it paid off. The film earned an Oscar nomination. Then came Dumb and Dumber, which pulled in $270 million and became a cult classic. Carrey improvised about 30% of the dialogue. But chaos followed him everywhere. He tried a dangerous snow stunt, shattered his ankle, and finished the shoot limping and bleeding. Jeff Daniels nearly froze to a ski lift pole and had to be rescued with warm water. Success was flowing. Sanity was slipping. In 1994, Fox sued him for $10 million over in living color residuals. He made roughly $20 million that year alone. But at the MTV Awards, he collapsed backstage. He whispered to a handler, "I need a break." Jim Carrey had made the world laugh. But his own laughter was fading. The Truman Show. When fiction became reality. When Carrey filmed the storm sequence in The Truman Show, the pressure was real, almost deadly. Director Peter Weir forced him through 150 takes in a massive indoor ocean tank. Waves slammed into him. The harness bruised his ribs. At one point, Carrey nearly drowned. Crew members had to jump in and drag him out. The final scene, Truman touching the wall, was done in one take. The movie cost $60 million and earned $264 million worldwide. Audiences didn't laugh. They stayed in silence. Jim Carrey wasn't a clown anymore. To prepare, he isolated himself for weeks. No calls, no family, barely any conversation. He lived like Truman, trapped, alone, and watched. But the isolation caused explosions behind the scenes. Carrey argued with Peter Weir, demanded more control, and even claimed he deserved a $20 million bonus if he won a Golden Globe. He won, but the damage to the set, emotionally, was done. Man on the Moon, transformation or possession. Carrey didn't just play Andy Kaufman. He disappeared into him. He lost 40 pounds. He stayed in character 24/7. He tormented co-stars. Even Danny DeVito asked for breaks just to recover from the intensity. During the final cancer scenes, Carrey injected himself with saline to mimic Kaufman's physical deterioration. The film made $50 million. Carrey won another Golden Globe. But he also lost his marriage. Lauren Holly left after 1 year. Carrey admitted he couldn't emotionally connect anymore. The documentary Jim and Andy later revealed the truth. Playing Kaufman didn't transform him. It shattered him. By 1995, during Batman Forever, Carrey's anxiety was consuming him. He took Valium just to stay calm. Tommy Lee Jones openly despised working with him. Carrey's addiction was beginning to surface. Then came Liar Liar, a comedy that earned $300 million. He improvised 60% of the script. Fans loved it. But years later, Carrey sued Universal for $2 million, accusing the studio of hiding royalties. The case was settled quietly, but the relationship never healed. On The Cable Guy, Carrey transformed into Chip Douglas so deeply that he terrified Matthew Broderick off camera. Broderick once yelled, "I don't know how to react anymore." Set delays were brutal. Broderick waited 14 hours in a trailer one day with no explanation. He later suffered a torn cornea during a stunt gone wrong. The film earned only $12 million at first. It wasn't a comedy. It was a psychological experiment that pushed too far. The Grinch, A Christmas Nightmare. $345 million at the box office. A global holiday icon. An Oscar-winning makeup team. And Jim Carrey? He suffered through 2.5 hours of makeup every morning. He said the costume felt like being buried alive. He needed breathing breaks just to stay sane. The success was huge, but the pain was real. In 2015, everything collapsed. Catriona White, Carrey's on-again, off-again partner, died from a drug overdose. She left a letter blaming him for emotional abuse and providing pills. Her family sued, accusing Carrey of giving her STDs, supplying medication, and abandoning her. Carrey's team denied everything. The case was dismissed in 2018, but the stain remained. The film cost $72 million and became a cult masterpiece. But to film it, Carrey went to emotional war. Director Michel Gondry refused to yell action, wanting Carrey to feel lost and unstable. Carrey shaved his head, worked 17-hour days, and later admitted the experience left him depressed for months. The brilliance was undeniable. The wounds were real. His father died in 2006. Carrey wrote a $10 million check for the funeral. It was closure for the boy who once lived in a camper van. His daughter Jane was diagnosed with autism. Their relationship strained, then collapsed under ideological differences. His roles got darker. His personal life got heavier. In The Number 23, which flopped with $37 million, Carrey became obsessed with numerology. He saw the number everywhere. It pushed him into therapy. In Kick-Ass 2, he refused to promote the film after the Sandy Hook shooting. He said he couldn't support gun violence in cinema. The movie made $60 million. But Carrey's statement made headlines. By 2020, Sonic the Hedgehog made $319 million. Carrey joked he returned because he bought too much stuff. He made $30 million more for Sonic 3. The studio even printed his script in 24-karat gold ink to lure him back. Then, in 2022, depression finally caught up with him again. He quit medication. He nearly died from pneumonia. He talked openly about therapy and healing. The world listened. The philosophy years. In 2017, Carrey gave a viral interview at a fashion event saying, "There is no me." People thought he was joking. He wasn't. He had spent years meditating and studying spiritual teachings. He said he no longer saw himself as a personality, just an expression of the universe. He painted endlessly, hundreds of massive canvases inspired by Christ consciousness. He told inmates at Homebow Industries, "Forgiveness is the gateway to heaven." He wasn't acting anymore. He was searching. The legacy. By 2025, Jim Carrey's films had earned over $1 billion. He had 2 Golden Globes, no Oscars, a billion laughs, and a lifetime of pain behind them. His greatest year was still 1994. Ace Ventura, The Mask, Dumb and Dumber, back-to-back. But the place where his soul lived, it wasn't in Hollywood. It wasn't in fame, or money, or applause. Jim Carrey believed in peace. And after decades of chaos, he finally began reaching for it.